afternoon, and welcome to From Where We Are. I'm Jack Waterman, coming to you live from Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center.
And I'm Nicholas Den. From Where We Are brings you stories of news and cultures through the lens of USC and Southern California. It's Monday, September 19th, 2022.
On today's show, Armenian Trojans reflect on the ongoing Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict.
Biden proclaims the end of the pandemic.
And a conversation with Madeline Hillier, founder of Team Awareness Combating Overdose, also known as TACO, on the fentanyl crisis.
All that and more after these news headlines from Monica Esquivel.
This morning, China responded to President Joe Biden's remarks on Sunday evening that the U.S. will defend Taiwan in case of Chinese invasion. However, Biden clarified how the U.S. would not persuade them into its decision.
We are not moving, we're not encouraging their being independent. That's their decision.
In a press release today, China's spokesperson, the Foreign Ministry, urged the U.S. to avoid spreading secession messages to Taiwan in order to avoid damaging Sino-U.S. relations and the peace in Taiwan. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck western Mexico early today near Michoacan. Today, September 19th, is the anniversary of previous catastrophic earthquakes that struck Mexico in 1985 and 2017, making this earthquake the third to occur on the same date. Hurricane Fiona strikes Puerto Rico, leaving catastrophic damages to the island. Intense flooding caused blackouts throughout the island, leaving millions of Puerto Ricans in the dark. The latest reports have declared 1 dead and billions of dollars in damages. The hurricane is moving through the Caribbean and currently making its way through the Dominican Republic. Sunday evening, USC students were notified of a hazardous material incident at UPC Sever Science Center. The building was evacuated as a result of an alleged hazardous material spill. The Los Angeles Fire Department gave an update stating the pungent odor of the leak was caused by water wash activation. However, danger is no longer present and the building is safe to return. This morning, singer-songwriter Kelly Clarkson received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The ceremony occurred in front of the Ovation Hollywood complex near the Dolby Theater where she won American Idol back in 2003, the first winner of the series. Clarkson expresses feeling blessed in her speech.
It's just a really special thing, and I feel very honored, and I don't feel deserving because I don't think people realize how many people actually make all of this happen.
Kelly Clarkson ending those news headlines from Monica Esquivel.
A recent but fragile ceasefire seems to be holding following recent fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but the political and military climate remains unstable. The Los Angeles area has the largest population of Armenians in the United States, numbering more than 200,000. As they absorb news of the current conflict, they have gathered to mourn, protest, and ask for support. Julia Zara filed this report.
Political conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan is nothing new. Since the end of the Soviet Union in 1991, the turmoil has largely focused on the contested territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. But Susanna Petrosian of the USC Institute of Armenian Studies says the current fighting is different.
So one of the main important points about this recent escalation, the attack on Armenia, was that this was an assault by Azerbaijan on the Republic of Armenia. And it's important to note that it was on the internationally recognized borders.
Petrosian explains that this time the attacks have taken a more hostile and gruesome turn.
The next thing is what ensued in the next 2 days after the attack started, which was heavy shelling on both military and civilian targets inside Armenia, as well as disturbing acts of violence against both soldiers and citizens. You know, we're talking about mutilation, rape, torture.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Armenia over the weekend. She denounced Azerbaijan's attack on Armenia, calling them illegal and deadly. Petrosian says she hopes U.S. support will be followed by tangible policy changes in the region, including cutting aid to Azerbaijan. Edward Gazarian studies international relations at USC Dornsife. He's also philanthropy chair of the USC Armenian Student Association, or ASA.
My family is from the town that recently got attacked, so I have a lot of family there, and it's just hard to balance school and like having to think about all of this, the safety of your family members. And I think it just takes a toll on your mental health and overall like wellness and even schoolwork. It's getting hard to concentrate.
Gazarian says ASA is focusing on humanitarian and advocacy work to spread awareness among the Armenian student community. They organized a fundraiser to aid displaced families affected by the conflict. But they regret that USC has not made an official statement concerning the conflict and attacks.
I think the university needs to do more to recognize the presence of Armenian students and provide more support systems, inform a lot of students on campus, and would make our fundraising or like any events that Armenian Students Association is doing even more powerful and more impactful.
Petrosian echoes this statement, saying that she hopes the conflict will come to a peaceful resolution with aid from the U.S.
We hope for more steps and actions by the U.S. that are tangible and will hopefully contribute to a real ceasefire that ends up in negotiations and compromises and a real agreement between the two countries.
Those are views by many in the Armenian American community. For Annenberg Media, I'm Julia Zara.
Annenberg Media will follow news of this conflict, and we hope to bring you more voices, thoughts, and opinions, including those of Azer Americans. We welcome your opinions on Instagram at Annenberg Radio.
President Biden surprised many people over the weekend. In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes, Biden declared that the COVID-19 pandemic is over. He added that the virus remains a problem in the U.S. Nicole Bendar looks at the president's motivations to say we're moving past the pandemic.
During CBS's 60-minute interview, Biden said this:
The pandemic is over.
Despite the president's drastic change of tone on the pandemic, the White House has remained staunch in its COVID-19 policy, with an emergency order and request for congressional funds staying in place. For some, Biden's attempt at reducing the prevalence of COVID-19 appears as a political tactic for future gain. Cami Akhavan, executive director at USC Dornsife Center for the Political Future, agrees with this.
So politically, does it score many points? Yeah, I think it does. I think it does, not necessarily with his base, but his base is going to support him anyway. And if anything, it'll convert a few moderates and conservatives to think that Joe Biden gets it.
These are political points that Biden seems to understand and use to his advantage. With less than 50 days till the midterm elections, Biden's approval rates have increased substantially in recent months, hiking from 36% in July to 45% in September, according to a poll from the AP NORC. Akhavan isn't the only person that believes that this is a political tactic. Irving Steinberg, the Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Associate Professor of Clinical Pharmacy and Pediatrics at USC, agrees and further believes that Biden's statement is concerning.
Well, this is where I think the messaging is really a little bit disturbing. First of all, you didn't hear any of the medical leaders coming out and saying that the pandemic is over. So I have to consider it a pure political message.
Biden's message also matches the American population's stance on the coronavirus, many of whom view the virus with less concern compared to the initial onset of the pandemic. Cami Akhavan of the Dornsife Center for the Political Future comments on this.
But it's also true that fewer numbers and a percentage of the American population is concerned about the coronavirus. And that's where we are. People just care less.
According to the CDC, the COVID-19 rates of new cases, deaths, and hospitalizations have all been on a declining trend. However, the threats from COVID are far from over. Data from the CDC shows that hundreds of Americans die from COVID-related reasons every day, with an average of around 1,400 who died last month. Now, about 60,000 Americans test positive every day, which is more than twice as many as last spring. Just last Thursday, the head of the World Health Organization said that the end of the pandemic is in sight, but that we're not quite there yet.
The virus is going to do what the virus is going to do, and whatever Joe Biden calls it is not going to change that.
USC still offers COVID-19 vaccines and boosters at no cost to current students, faculty, and staff. Book your appointment now through the USC pharmacies. Stay safe and be informed. For Annenberg Media, I'm Nicole Bednar.
And in the same 60 Minutes interview that aired yesterday, President Biden said it's too early to decide whether or not he'll run for re-election in 2024. He said it's his intention to run, but he has not yet made a firm decision.
With a recent rise in opioid-related deaths, we sat down with the founder of TACO, which stands for Team Awareness Combating Overdose, Madeline Hilliard, to talk about safety and awareness regarding drug use and overdoses. We began by asking her how to avoid substances that might contain fentanyl.
Yeah, so the issue last week with the very tragic overdose of, there were 2 overdoses, 1 death among high school students at Bernstein High. It's really heartbreaking. So I think it is the time to proceed with extreme caution when it comes to any pharmaceutical drug that didn't come from your own pharmacy. But in particular with regard to the counterfeit opiate drugs, right, like Percocet, Oxycontin, those are in the family of opiates. Those are expensive drugs to produce because they require distilling down the natural product from the actual opium poppy into that medication. So it's a very costly and labor-intensive process. Whereas with fentanyl, which is also an opioid, but it's significantly stronger, fentanyl is fully synthetic. So it's produced in a lab, which makes it, 1, stronger, but 2, significantly cheaper to produce. So now what we're seeing happen is instead of selling users a drug that's actual Percocet or actual Oxycontin, which is more expensive, we're seeing smaller amounts of fentanyl mixed in with filler powder, pressed into a pill that looks like a Percocet or looks like an Oxycontin, and then sold as that, which theoretically, because they're all opioids, they should give the user the same feeling. But because fentanyl is so much more potent, it only takes 2 milligrams, about 2 grains of sand worth to kill the average person. It's very hard for the illicit drug producers to get those measurements to where the user will get high but won't overdose.
For our viewers and anyone listening, really, what group is really being targeted, especially with these counterfeit drugs? And what's something they can take as a precaution before deciding to make this really big decision?
So that's really what TACO's purpose is. Our organization is to provide that information around drug use. The reason why TACO as an organization does not encourage or condemn drug use is because we want our visitors and our audience to know that we're not here to tell them what to do. We're here to provide them with the facts exactly as the data show. So all of our information comes from peer-reviewed published papers and government sources to help our audience stay as well informed as possible so that they can make their information off of actual data rather than, any messaging.
On the topic of education, I know it is a very serious subject and this isn't a class on how to be able to recognize and help those who are having drug overdoses, but just for the general viewer, right, if you could leave them with just a little tidbit on something that some immediate action that could be taken or signs to notice in someone who might be having an overdose, just a little bit of information for someone to take with them, some practical information that they could use.
So if you see someone with the big 3 signs of a fentanyl overdose, that's when it's time to call 911. And those big 3 signs are, number 1, unconsciousness, which you can check for by pinching the corner between the person's shoulder and their neck. If you pinch the muscle right there really hard, it hurts a lot. And if someone is not overdosing, that should wake them up from their unconsciousness. If they are overdosing on fentanyl, it's not going to wake them up. So if you pinch them right there and they don't wake up, you've now confirmed that they are unconscious. You're also going to want to check their breathing. Are they breathing? Are they breathing too slowly? The average person breathes once every 5 seconds. So if someone's only breathing a couple times a minute, that's not enough. And you can check for that just by placing your hand on the person's chest and feeling for the rise and fall. If you can't feel that, they're not breathing, definitely need to call 911. And then the telltale sign of a fentanyl overdose or an opioid overdose is what we call pinpoint pupils. So the black part of the person's eye is as tiny as it can possibly be. If you really want to check to confirm that, you can shine a flashlight in the person's eye and then move the flashlight away after a couple seconds. If their pupil stays the same size when the light is on it versus when the light is off it, it doesn't change, it stays tiny, that's a confirmed pinpoint pupil, and that is an opioid overdose. So those are the big 3 signs to know if somebody's overdosing on fentanyl, and at that point, you're definitely going to want to call 911, and if you have Narcan on hand, administer Narcan. And just the one thing I want to remind students, in California, we do have the Good Samaritan law for drug overdoses. And what that means is that if you call 911 for a drug overdose, even if you yourself are high on an illicit substance, you cannot be legally prosecuted for illicit drug use. So the person calling and the person overdosing are both protected from being prosecuted for illegal drug use.
Why is this such a common issue, especially when overdosing, and why are we losing lives because of this reason?
It is an enormous problem, and it's a growing problem, but the best thing that we can do is be talking about it, keeping our communities aware, keeping each other informed as young people, and knowing that we ourselves can make that difference as long as we're adequately prepared.
Thank you again for spending a little bit of your time with us on such a big and important topic that I know you just scratched the surface on.
Yeah, and thank you guys at Annenberg Radio for making this more accessible to college students and helping us to spread awareness. You know, that's what we're all about, and we're really grateful for you guys to take the time to join us in our effort.
Once again, that was Madeline Hilliard, founder of Taco. If you're looking for more information or interested in becoming overdose prevention certified, you can reach out to them at bookingattacoinc.org.
And that's all we have time for on today's From Where We Are. Valeria Diaz and Meredith McCabe produced today's show. We also got some help from Edward Lifson. As well, we had help from Jacob Wheeler, Annie Bang, Lori Carrillo, Veronica Louise Jacques.
And we got the best help. Sebastian Gruvog is our technical operator, and Derek Renfro composed our theme music.
We are also streaming live on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News. Subscribe to From Where We Are, as well as ARN Stories on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Finally, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Annenberg Radio. I'm Jack Waterman.
And I'm Nicholas Din. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we'll hope you join us again for
From Where We Are. You big Kelly.